All right, this is September 12th, 2025, and so this is actually, my third talk today, and tonight, and that is because it seemed to me that I was reminded that maybe today was my mom's birthday, and I just don't really exactly remember if her birthday was September 12th, which would be today, or if it was the 21st or the 22nd or the 28th. But based on the fact that it could be today, I just wanted to, and it seemed like, my dad kind of reminded me, which makes it all the more kind of, I don't know if the word is surreal. Or maybe so surreal, like my dad from beyond telling me about my mom from beyond. Well, look, but the thing is, so right now tonight, this lady here, Asha Rangappa. Asha Rangappa is obviously from India. That's what I'm thinking. The name sounds like it comes from India. And she looks like she could come from India in her nationality, her genealogical heritage. And this other guy, Renato Mariotti. Okay, well, Mariotti, see, last time I was talking about these two, I just, I didn't really know because, I've watched them a few times. It's on Legal AF, which is from Midas Touch, it's a legal kind of apparatus of their department. But Renato Mariotti, that's an Italian name. And, I was thinking, then, about my mom and also about you, my grandchildren and stuff, and, who you are. I mean, I can just tell you who you are based on what I know about who I am and who, your mom is, okay? Well, in regard to Isaac, I'm not going to really go into that because I don't really exactly remember really much particulars about his mom's heritage. All right. But I do about Adam and Amber's mom, and that is Italian. And this guy's Mariotti was Italian. So I know that from my mom, I know what she said, her mom and dad mostly had like between French and Irish. And then I got the genealogy from the Robbins side. The lady did a lot of work. I used to have tapes and stuff, but I think they all got destroyed. But I did put the genealogy, at least on the Robin side, on a chessboard that I gave Isaac, and plus I got Butt Cheek Holiday, that little thing. It's on there. Not typed out or anything, but the tree's on there. Amber wrote it. Anyway, so anyway, I was thinking about my mom, and I'm just, recollecting a certain thing about her. Now, she wasn't really educated, like, she had to get her GED, She didn't graduate high school, I don't guess, she had to get her GED. Her and my grandma did it together, so they could go to a government program to get a nursing license. She knew instinctually, some of the bedrock foundational kind of understandings that you might get from Sun Tzu. Tactical stuff. And a lot of times, it's a keen sensitivity to deception. That's what's required. And my mom had a keen sensitivity to deception. I don't know if my mom, was actually I don't know. I can't even, my mom would never even be in the position where I was in, where I pushed a knife into my neck. But I'm just saying, look, at that point I was deceived. But other times I have been deceived. And I have been deceived by people I trusted. That makes it bad. Well, anyway, look, this Asha Ragapta, I'm going to just play a minute of what she said because she reminded me of my mom. Because she said, talking about one of the chief justices in the Supreme Court, I think Brett Kavanaugh, which Trump put in, well, he made an opinion in a ruling, and his explanation for the opinion was kind of based on bonkers. I don't know, and this lady, Asha Rangappa, she teaches law at a university, and she's got work experience. She's just talking about it a little bit, and she reminded me of my mom. That my mom was no fool, even though she had to go the extra step, for her education. And might I remind you, part of her life, she grew up on a dirt floor. She lived in the attic of a house that was too small for all the occupants involved. So she slept up in the attic with her sisters. Got stung by bees. She had to wear boys' underwear sometimes. She got ridiculed in the girls' locker room for having on boys' underwear. Look, she didn't have it easy. You never caught a break. Well, you know what? Oh no, she's like a cat. Making her way in this life. She's dead now. But she lived her life, and she has some smarts. And this lady kind of reminded me of my mom. Your grandma. And her name was Sharon. Asha also kind of sounds like Sharon. Look, I'm just going to play this. I know it don't really, but you know what I'm saying. Both have S-H and A. Look. Right.
In addition to his sloppy math, because he doesn't cite the denominator of the population that he thinks, warrants this kind of racial generalizations, he minimizes the harm on the people who were stopped, because what he says is these are just brief stops. And really all that's going to happen is that ICE is going to ask them if they're here legally and just, if they're Americans. And if they say yes, then ICE will promptly let them go. And this is one of the things that Justice Sotomayor loses her mind about, because she says that is just belied by the record from the district court, because you have these sworn affidavits from people who were not detained briefly. They were detained for, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They were detained even after they showed actual government real ID. So what, even the way that he's trying to minimize the harm, which again is sort of, in my Substack, I teach about moral disengagement strategies. It's a way to kind of get an off-ramp for the harmful effects of what you're doing. He's just basically saying, no, it's not that bad for the people being stopped. And this is important in terms of the shadow docket generally when it comes to these injunctions against the Trump administration, this court has taken the position that the government suffers irreparable harm whenever it is unable to implement its policies, by definition. In other words, the executive branch, whenever it is unable to enforce the laws, suffers de facto, ipso facto, irreparable harm. And so that is weighed against, what's a few people being thrown on the ground here and there. I mean, he doesn't acknowledge that that's happening, but that's really the calculus that he's making. And it's interesting to me that he actually does have to distort the consequences of what is really happening to make his case on that balancing.
Yeah, Asha, one of the crazy things about that is enforcing the law kind of presupposes.
Okay, so, see, that's what I wanted to just put on there for the record, because that lady really reminded me of my mom. And when she said that's the calculus, talking about the Chief Justice, I forget what his name is now, but anyway, the guy that wrote the opinion that Trump put in there. But anyway, she says when he's making a calculus, his calculus, okay? And anyway, the word calculus would be a word that my dad would actually also use. And it's just weird because, it just reminds me really as if, I'm seeing actually places of agreement between my mom and my dad. And I didn't really ever experience that in real life. Because it was kind of walled off and play by the rules and do things by the numbers, between my parents, because they were divorced when I was little. And my mom got remarried. And then she got divorced again. And then, she became a Christian, and then my dad became a Christian. And see, the thing is, I almost forgot to say about my mom is, and there was the understanding that I received tonight, actually, is because my dad could never say anything against my mom or bring her in any kind of judgment successfully, at least, anyway. And I don't even think he really even tried that much. Because I think one time he did, my mom told me that the angel of the Lord shut my dad's mouth and he couldn't speak. And he was standing there on the porch with his mouth shut and he couldn't speak. Because she was always afraid of my dad. But that's what she said. That's what my mom told me. And my mom seemed to get her authority from God. Okay? And I think, my dad acknowledged that, and other people also acknowledge that fact. Could not bring her into judgment or anything. Because she wasn't serving herself, she was serving God. She wasn't looking out for her own interests as much as she was looking out to do right by God. Okay? It's not, serving yourself. I mean, there's a way to put it. I actually thought of something, but I forgot it now. But I mean, I still know, what the deal is, and that is, my mom, she, at least in her mind, for most of her life, toward the end, I think she kind of gave up a little bit. But, I mean, how can you not? I mean, she got squished. Well, literally and metaphorically and spiritually and emotionally and all that. But, you know, I don't know. So, you know, it's kind of like today could be her birthday. I just wanted to say that about my mom, you know, your grandma, Sharon. And, because she was underprivileged, was like the flower that grew up from between the crack and the cement of the sidewalk and survived. And look, there's a thing out of the Bible, the Rose of Sharon. I don't know, for some reason I always, when I think of my mom, I think somehow like of a rose. Sally, you cut that out. You get out here. Sally. See, Sally needs help. She's barking because somebody's laying down there. They ain't moving and paying attention to her, but she can't see. And she knows that if she walks on top of them, she might get attacked. Now watch. Watch, I gotta take. Come on, Sally. Come on. Come on, Sally. Come on. Come on, Sally. Come on. Okay, you go up there then. Go on. Hush up. Go on, Sally. Go on. Come on. You get up there. Go on. Hey. I'm not gonna help her up right now. Look. Anyway, you know, I was just thinking about my mom, and she really loved animals because animals were straightforward and not really characterized by deception. Although, you know, cats, and my mom was a real cat lover. You know, cats understand deception, and they know things can hide behind things, and they can hide behind things. But hey, you hush up over there. Look, but she knew about animals and the ways of animals and the tensions and the difficulties that people go through, and she could learn a lot from the animal world. My mom was really in touch with animals. She had that vibe and everything, you know. Yeah. Like she had magical powers. They said Solomon could talk to the animals, King Solomon. My mom could not be underestimated, especially if it was her animal. You would not believe the things. Look, man, Casper the cat, you know, she had to dig into his neck like that far to get the root of the frickin' boil out. Something like that. She did what it took to keep him alive. And I had to help, and so did my brother, hold him down while she did her work. She knew somewhat about it. I mean, you know, she was a nurse and everything. So, you know, but, you know, like I had to learn a lot of stuff on the job too. That's what you call on-the-job training, all right? You got a task before you, and then, you know, you just got to jump into action. And even though if you've never really been properly trained, I've been in that situation before, and so did my mom. And, you know, my dad's saying, yeah, and I'm here to tell you. That is the way it's going to be. That's what my dad said, I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that. Now I'm here to tell you what my mom was, who she was. So, you know, a lot of times these kind of things, you know, are passed on, just like in animals, you know, if eye might be a certain color, and that might be indicative of they're going to have a certain trait also. And that's the way that works. And I mentioned that before. All right. You, my grandchildren, I just want to tell you that about your grandma. Your grandma, Sharon, Joan, her maiden name was Whitten. Sharon Joan Whitten. Joan, Joan. All right. Bye.